In your view, what does the future of the industry look like for threat intelligence and threat hunting, and how is the MITRE ATT&CK framework evolving to support the industry? John, Bryson, Zach, Steve, Tyler probably want to make counterpoints. I think we can certainly go around the horn as necessary.
Sounds like I have quite a pile-on coming. So I'm obviously biased, and especially the types of intelligence I've sort of watched for coming the last 5 years as attacks been public. But we've definitely seen a increasing trend over time towards more people talking about behavioral intelligence. So talking about what adversaries are actually doing and not just publishing piles of IOCs and calling it threat intelligence. I think that trend's going to continue. Back in 2015 when ATT&CK came out, there was almost no reporting in that space talking about adversary activity in detail. Today, there's quite a bit of it coming out, and I think that's going to continue, where people are interested in publishing in that space, people are interested in talking about that space, and hunting in the same direction. Again, we've seen the shift sort of up the pyramid of pain from looking at straight up IP addresses to adding in more and more behaviors, adding in different SIM analytics using things like Sysmon, which I'm a huge fan of, and different ways of seeing what kind of behaviors are going on in the end systems. And I think that trend's going to continue whether or not it's ATT&CK people are using to describe those behaviors. I think that trend is independent of anything we're doing. In terms of where we're going in trying to evolve over time, I mentioned earlier that we're looking a lot at cloud right now. Cloud's obviously an incredibly important space for enterprise. We stayed out of it for a while because we didn't have enough we could say there. We didn't have the threat intel. We didn't have the knowledge of what the space looks like enough yet to go there. And that's luckily changed. We've been able to do an initial release. We're continuing to work on it. We're looking at new SaaS platforms, looking at more activity in various infrastructure as a service space, and continuing to build up that intel picture fairly actively. And so each new release with ATT&CK, hopefully we'll see a bit more ATT&CK coverage. Similarly, we continue to look across areas in general that appear to have adversary activity, looking for that turning point where there's enough threat intelligence to be able to talk about it intelligently. So, things like containers, things like Internet of Things, IoT devices. Is there enough for us to be able to say to add it as a domain, which would be something sort of totally separate from an enterprise attack, or a platform where we're able to integrate it into enterprise attack and say something useful? And so we're probably not going to add something to add one or two techniques to it. We're looking for where there is a little bit of a threshold of having some idea of the scope of adversary activity. We're trying to grow things, but we're also trying to improve what's there already in the knowledge base. Something we have going on right now, hopefully going to see the results this summer, is that we're in the middle of redoing data sources. So similar to what we did with mitigations, where we made those an object, made it something you could pivot on and see what different techniques a particular mitigation might take care of, you'll soon be able to do the same thing with data sources. And so we're going across every technique, looking at, do we have the right data sources, getting into more detail on what sorts of information you'd want to collect. And again, making that pivot easier, where you can see what techniques a single data source might be able to get you able to see. And finally, someone mentioned it at the very beginning, we did a release with something called sub-techniques last week. A huge release for us last Wednesday. It's by far the biggest change we've ever made to the framework. I promise we're going to try to never do anything that painful again. We understand full well how nasty that is for a lot of product and security vendors and the community in general. But we felt that the granularity of attack had just gotten too far out of control with us incrementally adding techniques until we had, what's the super long, defense evasion and everything else behind me, where some tactics, we had very broad techniques that were describing general behaviors, and some tactics, we had very, very specific single binary techniques. So we did a refactor where techniques are now all at that, attempting to be at that broader level, where if we've got techniques with that finer granularity, we're making them children under those. And it also should allow people to describe their coverage a little bit better. So instead of just saying that you've covered scripting, you can talk about everything from PowerShell, JScript, Unix scripts, stuff like that, and get into a lot more of the detail. And we have more on the horizon, but those are kind of the big things that we've got cooking right now.
I just want to say, since we're running low on time, I just want to say thanks to Adam and the MITRE team for everything that they do. And I do fundamentally believe that what MITRE is doing right now is without question one of the most important things that's happening in computer security.
While we were talking, and you are in there as a contributor. So it did, I knew it was in there, but it did make it in. It did make it in there with your name on it too.
They can check the box on John. One other part of ATT&CK that hasn't been mentioned yet, of course, is ATT&CK for ICS. I think a lot of folks thought of the conversation solely within the traditional enterprise, but the continued interconnectedness and the proliferation of sensors in industrial control system, operational technology environments is a huge space. I mean, there has been very limited pen testing and even more limited red teaming in those areas because it's so hard to do and it's so risky. So in terms of where I see a lot of change is particularly around how we've already seen the passive anomaly detection and asset inventories like the Nozomis, the Clarities, the Dragoses of the world, and how they're moving to a hybrid model. And I think that that's going to be some kind of stepping point to even more consumption of the threat intelligence that those companies are already putting it, where it leads to the similarity of what we're going to see on the enterprise side, which really echoes what Adam did in a different way, which is fundamentally process efficiency. How do we take and make and automate these things moving up the pyramid so there is less burden on manual operation? And then finally, I just have to point out, I literally gave this talk as a lightning talk at ATT&CK last year called Sticks in the Mud. So I'll just reference that here.
And I hadn't mentioned ATT&CK for ICS yet or ATT&CK for mobile, but ATT&CK for ICS is another one of those areas where it took a long time to hit that tipping point where we had enough to say that we could really get it out there. We had a ton of help from the community, acknowledged in the techniques themselves. And we're working to make that more similar to the rest of ATT&CK right now. So getting things like mitigations in there, so what do you actually do about all of those techniques, and moving it towards being aligned with sort of the rest of our ecosystem, getting it into Sticks, getting it into Navigator, getting it into more of our normal frameworks so that people can work with it. But it's been good to have it in a much more flexible space as it goes through more rapid development than some of the rest of ATT&CK.
One of the things I think we'll also see is we're going to have to see a influx of actual analysts that can take a lot of the framework and a lot of the groundwork that has been laid by a lot of these tools. And at some point, these tools have to be evaluated. IOCs have to be evaluated. Network detections and alerts all have to be evaluated. And at the end of the day, that is, AI and ML is not going to save the day here, at least yet. And that means that you're going to have to invest some time and invest some money into personnel, into resources, into FTEs, into companies that can provide the level of expertise and technical capabilities to really understand how to prioritize and push forward on all of these different risk scenarios. When you start to talk about the cloud, one of the reasons the cloud was such a big deal and such a big target, I think, is because not everybody understands it well. Even to date, the people that understand cloud don't fully understand the full CDIC pipeline or how the company is leveraging the cloud and how that ties back into traditional network environments. And so really getting those technical people and resources up to speed on, how these things work together, but also how attackers are attacking them, and then how to secure them properly based on a lot of the stuff that MITRE is doing and the IOCs and behaviors, and doing that efficiently. Looking at stuff like the microsegmentation and zero trust models, and really starting to change our are the way we're attacking this problem and really start to bring some effect and change to, all the areas. Because you got ICS integrations into the cloud that then tie back to a corporate environment with all of the work from home people. So you end up with this massive attack surface of disparate technologies that really leads to some serious compromise potential.
Well, like I said, appreciate everybody's insights for sure, and I think I speak for everybody. Certainly, there's a lot of passion certainly in the room. Certainly, thank you to Adam, thank you to John, thank you to Zach, thank you to Bryson, thank you to Tyler and Steve. I think certainly once COVID rounds out, hopefully maybe we can take the show on the road. I know Zach Hinkle would probably love that for sure. I'm sure we all probably would. But thank you for everybody for joining. And again, this has been the first edition of NESO's Advanced Persistent Talks. And thank you again.